And my father was dying of stage 4 cancer. I was at our family home with him and hospice was in the house. So I had no choice but to show up fully, authentically myself. I do not recommend you try this at home, but I just quit my job. We need to understand how it works and we want to learn. The revenue and economic models for groups are misaligned with how human nature functions. So interesting. I haven't talked about this story in a long time, but
Superclusters is where we demystify the secrets, stories, and tactics behind the money that moves the venture capital world.
So, I have a dilemma. I usually take this time to introduce our guest, but there is no way I can describe Samira Salman in a soundbite. She's multifaceted. She helped write tax code with Congress, was in-house tax counsel at the Shell Oil Company. She invests in, builds, and grows startups and brands. She runs a family office community, the Collaboration Circle, bringing together the most recognizable surnames you've ever heard of, something I promise you we'll get into. And I don't mean communities in the lightest and most overused sense of the word, but in its truest definition, bringing people together to have candid discussions. In fact, in scripting this introduction, I could only think of 2 words: family office. She's one of the world's foremost thought leaders on specifically the permutation of those 2 words. And I don't know how to better describe her brilliance except for you to witness it yourself in the next hour and change. We talk about how she arrived at the oldest American boarding school in Europe, or how her father having cancer led her to growing the most powerful community within private wealth, and things she's never shared publicly before. I also want to give a huge shout out to my good friend Lauren Jarvis for connecting us last year, without which this episode would not have been possible. So, without further ado, Samira Salman.
thank you for having me.
I want to start this off, and I mentioned this a little bit, but and there's like lots of things to unravel here. But I want to start from your high school. And so how does one find themselves at the oldest American boarding school in Europe, 2 years after its accreditation with the European Council of International Schools?
I love that question, and my years at TASIS were very dear to me. And serendipitously, I'm going there. So TASIS is in Lugano, which is one of the lakes, as the lakes on the border between Switzerland and Italy. There's 3 of them: Lugano, Como, which is the more famous one, and Maggiore. And serendipitously, next week, I'm going to speak at a conference on Lake Como. So I'm going to pop over. Yeah, I know. So my family lived overseas. So I was born in the U.S., but when I was born, my parents lived in the UAE. So I was born in America and then went back over to the Middle East. So I grew up in the Middle East and Europe. And at the time, when it was time for me to go to the end years of high school, so junior and senior year, my family was in Turkey. And, you know, those are college preparatory years. And so my parents were like, do you want to go away to school? You know, there were great schools in Turkey, but not the same as a Swiss boarding school. Yeah. And I've always had I have 5 planets in Sagittarius, which is the travel sign. So I'm always like, my passport's usually in my purse and my bag's always packed. So I was like, yes, absolutely. So that's how I ended up there.
Were there other options your parents gave you, or was that the go to school in Turkey or go to school in Switzerland?
We looked at maybe staying in the U.S., but that was like not really interesting to me. Okay. And we looked at, I think, 1 or 2 other Swiss boarding schools, but this one really stood out. We went and visited it. Okay. And the minute I set foot on campus, I was like, this is my place.
Do you remember, and this is a lot of years back, but like, do you remember what stood out the most when you first stepped on campus?
It's how it felt. It felt now the campus is very different than back then, but it still has the same feeling. It feels very cozy and nurturing, but academically elite, if that makes sense. So you know how some academically elite institutions or situations feel a little bit cold or sterile or, you know, stuffy or uncomfortable. This was really academically elite, but very welcoming and warm and comfortable.
What were some of the interactions? Were you just like, when you landed on campus, did you just talk to a student? Did you talk to the principal? Like, how did those interactions come to play? I know this was a while back, but if you remember.
You're saying like when we started school?
Not even when you started school. Like when you went to visit campus.
Yeah.
How did you feel the academic rigor in the atmosphere? I know this is a very like conceptual question, but I really, because to be fair, and I'll buy you some time. When you walk on a Stanford campus, there is the same aura of academic rigor. And it's like, I call it the quality of eavesdropping. Like, I'm not actively in these conversations, but I just hear what's going on. And people are talking about, like, tech startups, like, how do you start this? Like, and like, quantum physics or something. And it's very different from if I were to step on campus on my high school. Like, the conversations are different. It's about sports, about like, did you watch the game last night? And that's how I describe like, the aura. But I'm curious for you, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm curious for you, was there something similar when you were going to TASIS, when you were visiting TASIS?
Yeah, so it wasn't necessarily the conversations, but it was references to the types of activities, things that happen in the classroom, like different types of field trips. And, for example, they said in art history, this is the textbook we use. And on the weekend, we go to Arles in France, where Van Gogh sat and painted the painting, so it was the way that the academics were kind of executed that allowed you to know there was a little bit of an elevated situation there.
Gotcha. You have learnings outside the classroom as well. And you mentioned something earlier, Arles. I actually don't know. How do you spell Arles? More so for the show notes later.
Arles. So it's a city in the south of France where Van Gogh used to, I think that's how you spell it. We might need to Google that, but
we'll figure it out. I want to go on a side quest, which probably will end up being the main quest, in all fairness. I want to talk about family offices. So we've held that at bay for long enough. You've seen a lot of family offices. You work with a lot of family offices. And in an email that you sent me fairly recently, you said that it took a lot of internal rewiring to go from a lawyer brain to an allocator's. And so how does a corporate tax lawyer find their way into the family office world?
Such an interesting question. So I was a corporate tax M&A structuring lawyer. I practiced for 8.5 years. I worked at 3 public accounting firms, and then I was in-house at Shell Oil Company. And when I was at Shell, I was also the vice chair of the American Bar Association Energy and Environmental Taxes Committee, which means I wrote tax law with Congress. And before I go any further, I'm going to give a big disclaimer. I do not recommend you try this at home, but I just quit my job. And I quit practicing law. I wasn't happy. I didn't want to do it anymore. I felt like I had really experienced everything I wanted to. The reason I became that kind of a lawyer is I wanted to be like Richard Gere in Pretty Woman. I wanted to buy and sell the companies. And so I did that for a while. And then after I did it for a while, I didn't want to do it anymore. So I quit. And I didn't really have this full plan when I quit. But I knew at the time what I loved was connecting with people and helping them solve problems. So it started with, kind of wanting to be a problem solver, because I realized my favorite times of my day were my breakfast meetings, lunch meetings, and dinner meetings, where I'd be one-on-one or, a small group of us having conversations like this. I'm like, I love talking to people about what they're doing. I was like, how do I make that my job? So I started a consulting company called Salman Solutions, which I have to this day. And, Salman is my last name, and Solutions is I'm solving problems. And it's still my favorite thing to do. I love when people say, they call me and they're like, Samira, can you help with this? We need your advice on this. How would you handle this? Like, I love doing that. So that allowed me to start working in the private investment world. I started building private companies, meeting family offices, and that's what brought me into the family office world.
I have so many questions, because in that bio you shared so far, I think there were a couple leaps of faith. So let's start somewhere, and we'll find our way to meander to eventually family offices. So another detour from the detour. How did you decide to quit? Like, what was the straw that broke the camel's back? Was there a straw that broke the camel's back?
Yeah. Good story. So I'll back up a little bit. So I quit in February of 2008. So starting in the summer of 2006, I was in Europe for work. I worked at Shell Oil Company at the time. Before they had consolidated the headquarters, the finance headquarters were in London. So I was in London. We just had a bunch of meetings, closed a deal, whatever. And I remember waking up and I was in this very opulent hotel room, one of those that had the clicker that opened the shades, the curtains.
Wow.
And yeah, it was a really fancy hotel room. And we had just had a lovely, exquisite dinner at one of the great London restaurants. And I remember sitting up in the bed and I opened these fancy curtains and we just had this lovely meal. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm not happy, but I should be happy because all this stuff around me looks really nice, right? I'm in this fancy hotel room in a beautiful city. I just had a great dinner, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's kind of what really started a personal development exploration journey for me.
Yeah.
And I went to The Hague a couple of days later, which is where the Shell headquarters are.
Sorry,
And
what was it called again? Hague?
The Hague. The Hague.
How do you spell that?
THE
Oh.
and then Hague, HAGUE. It's a city in the Netherlands.
I didn't know that. Okay.
And it's where Shell Oil Company is headquartered. Yeah. So I went to this other city, The Hague, and I started journaling for the first time. And at the time, I did not know what journaling was. And I had this notebook in my bag that I had been using to write to-do lists on and ripping out. So it only had 3 or 4 pages left, but I remember it vividly. I was in this square in The Hague and I sat at a table and I just started writing. And that's kind of what brought me to this, 20-year-long personal development journey. Journaling is still part of my daily practice. And I firmly believe that journaling, meditating, and walking, and you can do a walking meditation, but those consistent practices are much more effective than everything else combined, right? If you have a daily ritualistic, consistent practice.
Right.
So I started journaling, and over the next year and a half, I really went deep about figuring out why I'm not happy and how I can become happy. And through part of the exploration allowed me to understand that the type of work I was doing was not, even though I was good at it and I trained for it and I had prestigious positions, I didn't really enjoy it. It didn't make my soul sing and it wasn't why I'm on this planet. And so I had gotten to the point where I was pretty miserable. And, so interesting. I haven't talked about this story in a long time, but I was part of a female breakfast group here in Houston, and it was called Dawn, the Downtown Area Women's Network. And we used to meet once a month for breakfast. And on February 6, 2008, we had a Dawn breakfast. And at that breakfast, I said, and it was a group of professional women. We'd been meeting together for years. And at that breakfast, I said, I am thinking about quitting the practice of law. I know some of you have done that. You've quit being lawyers and transitioned to other careers. I said, would you be willing to talk to me, share your experiences, help me understand? And so a couple of the ladies said yes. And then that day happened to be Ash Wednesday. Now, I'm technically Catholic and Orthodox, but I'm much more spiritual, but I do go to church sometimes. Mm-hmm. And a couple of my girlfriends who are Catholic said, Samira, would you like to go to mass at lunchtime? We'll get our ashes and then we'll go have a lunch. I said, sure. And I was in church, and nothing like this has ever happened before or since, David. So I'm letting you know. But literally, I was in church on Ash Wednesday, 2008, and I got this message that was quit your job.
Wow.
And so I went back to, now keep in mind, let me give the preface.
Yeah.
It's a year and a half since I started journaling. I've been doing a lot of personal development work, reading books, setting intentions, trying to figure it out, right? So it wasn't I just woke up one day. I mean, a year and a half of preparation and daily ritualistic practice. And then I walk into church and it's quit your job. And to this day, I mean, I don't know how to explain what happened, but something happened. And then I go to lunch afterwards and my girlfriends are like, you're being awfully quiet. I'm like, I know. I'm like processing. And then I went back to my job and I quit my job that afternoon.
I have 2 questions. I'll save one for later. What was that feeling like? Like you had gotten to a premonition of quit your job. How did that feel? Did you feel relieved? Did you feel seen? Like, how did you feel?
Yeah. You know, so I'm the child of immigrant parents. So my father came to this country on a boat. He didn't have food to eat in college. Sometimes he was really poor. And so in my culture and in my home, we need to, you know, get as educated as possible and achieve what we can. And so I had always done what my parents told me to do. I went, you know, I got a graduate degree. I got good corporate jobs. I worked at prestigious institutions and companies. And I never stopped to say, do I really like this? Do I want to do this? Am I happy? You know? And at that point, I mean, like I said, when I shared my credentials earlier, I mean, I had a global position at Shell Oil Company. I had a vice chairmanship of the American Bar. So I had checked all the things off, and that's what allowed me to feel comfortable. Like many people ask me, weren't you scared? I had none of those feelings. I wasn't scared. I didn't hesitate. I had such clarity because I had such data behind me of, look, I've done all the things I'm supposed to do. I went to college. I went to law school. I got an LLM, which is a master's of law and taxation. Then I got really great jobs. And then I excelled in my career. And then I had a vice chairmanship at the American Bar. Like I checked all the things off the list.
Mm-hmm.
And I checked all the things off the list and I'm not happy. So it felt like a relief and it felt like an answer to a question that I had been trying to solve at that point actively for a year and a half. So it was a very natural evolution of where I was in my process.
I probably should have asked this sooner. Why did you initially want to be a tax lawyer?
I wanted to be like Richard Gere and Pretty Woman. I wanted to buy and sell companies. And, you know, I wanted to build and grow things.
Pretty Woman, and that was like the click that was like, I want to be just like that? Or was this like, was there a build up towards it?
I was fascinated. I wanted to do that job.
Okay.
Yeah. It's funny. I watched it. I'm pretty sure I would have to go back and check. Pretty sure I watched it when I was at boarding school, the boarding school we were talking about earlier.
TASIS, sorry.
TASIS, yeah. Yeah. I thought it was so interesting how they bought and sold the companies. And I mean, technically it's still what I do to this day, right? We build things with people. So yeah, I didn't understand that it was tax lawyers that did that. So at first I thought it was corporate lawyers that did the structuring, but really tax lawyers do. So, but I had both those experiences as well. And I'm super grateful for it. Like I would not have changed any component of my path at all. I use my lawyerness every single day. Teaches you how to think critically. You know, in our business, I mean, documents are part of our business.
Totally.
And I love that I'm legally trained. I love that my mind thinks that way and that I understand all these things. I think it makes me a bit of a more bold investor. But I also knew I had been there, done that, and I was ready for something else.
There is such beauty and clarity of thought that comes with legal training as well. And even as someone who's asking dumb questions to smart people like yourself, I find this exhibited through, like, we've had a couple lawyers by training on the podcast who ended up becoming allocators, including Josh Cantor, who's also been on the podcast, Jacqueline Freeman Hester, who's at Foundry Group. And there is beauty in the way they describe things. And it is unlike others. I'm not saying that the others are better or worse kind of thing, but there is a sense of logic and reasoning of this is how you arrived at this conclusion that I really deeply admire. But I had a bookmark. There's a folded page corner that we had earlier that I didn't mention, but I want to go back to. You mentioned that you had journaled for a year and a half. Do you remember any of the journaling prompts that you had at the time?
Yes. I literally, I mean, I have them all, so I could actually, if we do a follow-up, I could actually like dig them out and read them to you. But I mean, I remember I wrote, I am not happy. Why am I not happy? I have checked all the things off the list. Like, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Why am I not happy? And that allowed me to have a place to explore those things. And I've always worked with coaches and mentors and spiritual healers, all the people, right? But that's, an hour, maybe 2 hours a week at best.
Yeah.
And I think that the hour and 2 hours a week with paid professionals is way more effective when you do the homework before and after yourself, which is the journaling, because all the answers are inside you. Everything you need to know about you, your life, your pathway, all that is inside of you. You just have to be able to access it. Yeah. And I think journaling is one of the best ways. There's a lot of studies out there that actually putting physical pen to physical paper, the neurological benefits and the, neural pathways that get wired, those kind of things. But I love it. My journal is like my whoopee. It's like here right now.
I'm with you as well. Like I have
I love it.
Huge stack of journals next to me. And in fact, like I am like taking notes of this conversation on this as well, which is illegible, by the way. But at least it helps me track a lot of these things. And I do like the physical nature of it. And obviously, as you mentioned, there are studies that show you have better memory retention if you write pen to paper instead of typing things out, because the physical stroke of you writing a letter versus the physical stroke of you typing a letter is very different. And it takes more neurological pathways to write a letter than to type.
I still take handwritten notes to this day in most meetings. And people think it's strange and whatever, but I process by writing. Yeah. So I can hear you say something and that's great. If I write it down, I take notes sometimes when I'm having like conversations with friends, and I go back and I reference them and I synthesize and I, refer back to interesting, cause I can remember, I'll be like, oh yeah, David and I talked about XYZ and I took a note about it.
And I do want to caveat by saying that you had a legal training and you have to absorb a tantamount amount of information in order, like as a lawyer, right? 2, you are heavily involved in the technology world as we are today. And you have your fair share of note takers out there, and you actively choose to still physically write notes. And I think there's beauty in that.
Well, I mean, I've been using Otter AI for a long time. Yeah. I love Otter. And I think it's really good. Yeah. But what it does not capture is when you are in a conversation with somebody, sometimes your mind creates something, right? And you write that down. If it's not verbal, the Otter can't know it. I mean, we're probably a short time off in knowing what I'm actually thinking, but as of now. And I think part of that was we were speaking about law school. So law school was a beautiful experience for me. Yeah. I would have gone back if I could. It's very hard. It's correct. Law school is very hard, but it's a beautiful cerebral experience, and it allows you, it's almost like, vacation for your brain in the sense that like you can kind of do whatever you want, right? It teaches you how to think, you can explore, you can color outside of the lines. And I think it's one of my superpowers to this day is that I've never been Wall Street trained. I do have an economics undergraduate degree and took a lot of business courses, but I don't have an MBA, and I've never been Wall Street trained. And I think being trained to think in a way that allows you to not have to fit everything in corners and boxes and edges. I mean, by nature of your law school exam, they're, 6, 7, 8 hour essay exams. So you can just, and that, freedom and invitation to think like that and outside the lines and be creative, I think is one of my superpowers as an investor. And, if you ask around, like a lot of people say that I will see something or ask something that nobody else in the room will. And it's because my mind was allowed to color outside the lines in my professional training, given the fact that, or coupled with the fact that I lived in many different countries and experienced different cultures. So I know that my brain sees, will go to a situation from a vantage point that's different than most other people.
Yeah, first of all, I love that. And two, we'll get much deeper in this, and this is what we call foreshadowing here. We'll get much deeper into this throughout the rest of this episode. I want to go back to when you quit. So you quit. Did you have a landing pad of this is what I'm going to do next, or was it just I'll figure it out?
It's very interesting. So I quit that day, February 6, 2008. And then I will never forget. So I used to TiVo Oprah.
I actually don't know what that is.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry. Am I too young for this?
TiVo is like, yeah, maybe. I don't know. TiVo is the thing that we used to record stuff on the TV with.
Oh, it was like a VCR.
It was like yeah, but it wasn't like a physical thing. It was electronic.
Oh, okay.
It was like you would just set TiVo to record. It was, I think it was an outside box. I can't remember either right now.
Maybe. I think in my childhood, we had this lapse of memory where we had the VCR days and then we just suddenly switched to like DVD and quickly after we switched to cloud. I think there was a huge lapse in memory in my personal experience.
It's basically a digital video recorder.
Okay.
Right? So, I mean, like a VCR, but without a physical thing.
I love it.
Did it digitally.
Evolution.
So I recorded Oprah every day and I would watch it at night. And that night, when I watched it, the guest on Oprah was a woman named Louise Hay, she's kind of one of the pioneers or godmothers of personal development and, metaphysical thinking and those kind of things. And I remember she was speaking about how when you plant a seed and you water it every single day. And for months and months and months, you don't see anything, like nothing's happening. And then all of a sudden the thing starts growing. And I thought it was very serendipitous that was the Oprah episode, the day that I quit, because of what I had been doing for the prior year and a half with my journaling and my, exploration of what I'm going to do next is planting the seed. Mm-hmm. And so the day that I quit, I think is the day the thing sprouted. And it's very serendipitous what happened after that. And it was very it was almost magical and magnetic. Like all of a sudden I got this download of Salman Solutions. Like the name just popped to me. So I bought the URL and then all of a sudden a business plan came out. Like I remember I opened up my computer and I just started typing and it was basically the business plan for a business that was based on a lot of strategic partnership relationships and, kind of high-end problem solving and these kind of things. So I didn't technically have a plan that minute I quit.
Yeah.
But I knew something was brewing. So I had already gone through the exercise of think through my expenses and trim the fat and be thoughtful of that. But then, my goal minute one was do not lose my house. Cause I just bought a house. So it's don't lose a house. All right.
Got to pay that mortgage.
I think I took some of my prepaid, vacation and or some of my accrued vacation when I quit and prepaid my mortgage. I'm okay, I have a place to live. And then I just kind of, I started going to all kinds of different things. I did a lot of informational interviewing, sitting down with people, asking them questions. And I just really jumped out into the entrepreneurial community. I went to all kinds of different meetings. And one thing I always say is that this part of my story was in Texas because, subsequently I ended up, living Houston. In other places, but yes. And I really credit part of the Houston entrepreneurial ecosystem. It was very open and welcoming and very new, right? I mean, Houston is more of a, oil and gas and healthcare and, so we didn't have this really deep ecosystem. So it was very open and welcoming and easy to access. And I made, friends with people and found a community. And that's how I started kind of, building my business.
I've seen and read about you refer to Houston lovingly as H-Town and quite often throughout the gym hours I've been putting for this conversation. To go back to the beginning of Samira Solutions, who were you interviewing? Like, what were the ICPs?
Yeah.
Who did you go to? Did you go to like every single friend, or I imagine it was a lot more focused than going to everyone?
So when I started Salman Solutions,
Oh, sorry, Salman Solutions.
In the very beginning, it's okay. A lot of people say that word, but I think I'm going to take a cue and rebrand.
Maybe S squared. It's still S squared.
In the very, very, very beginning, I knew that I liked to help solve people's problems. And what I knew at the time was that I love to sit down with my empty notebook and ask questions and listen and then create a solution. But the beauty of this always has been that my legal technical training, so tax, legal, finance, accounting, like those are the backbones of business, right? So I was a corporate tax M&A structuring lawyer, but I lived and, I worked in accounting firms.
Yeah.
So I always learned how to look at businesses underneath financial statements at general ledger account levels, which is the building blocks of business, right? Yeah. So I think that the finance and accounting and numbers and structuring and legal training is what really gave me the ability to explore the other parts of business. I think if I didn't have such confidence in that area of my life, it might have been more difficult. But what I realized was because I understand these things really well, I can go into any kind of business and I can ask for, let me see your ownership structures, your cap tables, and the last 3 years of your financials. And let me talk to some of your top people and some of your lower level employees. And between and among all those data collection sets, I can tell you exactly what's going on here. Like I realized that because I started my career diligencing and doing roll-ups. So it's all the same skill set. You're basically an investigator, right? Yeah. You're like Inspector Gadget for the business. So I think at that time, I knew that I really enjoyed learning about businesses. And at the time, because I just practiced law in an accounting firm, and we had done a lot of deals and structures, most of my clients were law firms, accounting firm, professional services. I did my very, very first client was an RIA. So, very adjacent fields.
Yeah. And
helping those businesses run and develop business and, teach employees how to develop business, those kind of things. So I didn't I didn't color too far out the lines. And then after a couple of years of helping build and grow professional services businesses and develop strategies and be advisors to, CEOs, managing partners, boards, I said, I really enjoy helping people with business, building their businesses, growing their businesses, solving problems. But now I want to look into different industries.
Yeah.
And that's when I started in different industries. And then I said, okay, now that I'm really helping develop strategies, solve problems, build businesses in different industries, I want to help now raise the private capital to fund those strategies we were developing. So up until that point, when I had done all the deals in the firms, the capital was always secured from another source. And that's when I started getting into the family office world, understanding how to, connect with humans for their private capital.
Was your first interaction with a family office fundraising for one of your clientele, or was it more organic? Because I know you go to a lot of events, and was it just like you were at an event, you were learning about these things, you're like, well, actually, they can fund a lot of private initiatives?
So my first interactions were when I practiced tax law. I did tax controversies work for a while, which means you litigate against the IRS. And we did have some clients that were single family offices that we were helping navigate some of their tax situations. So that's my real first exposure to it. My second exposure was that a lot of the private equity firms that we worked with, or venture capital firms, investors, LPs, or family offices. And then my third big exposure was I was helping a client on a strategic growth plan.
Yeah.
Hiring team. How do we build this company? We have one purchase order. What do we do with it? And then they needed co-invest capital. And that was my first real, foray into working with a family office. But before I did any of that, when I had quit, a lot of people were like, you should really go into private equity or venture capital. And I started looking into it and I'm like, wait a minute, where do they get their money from? High net worth individuals, single family offices, sovereign wealth funds. So I was like, why don't I just work for those people? Cut out the middlemen. And so then I did a process of what I called, informational interviewing. And I sat with about 40 or 50 private investors, family offices, individuals. And I just asked blank space questions. I wasn't trying to raise for anything. I wanted to understand, how do you deploy capital? What do you look for? What are the signs of a successful investment for you? What are the red flags for you? What kind of information do you like? How do you like to be communicated? And to this day, I mean, that was, I don't know, many, many years ago. To this day, it's how we've built the collaboration circle group. I go in with my blank notebook, my journal, and I ask questions that are open-ended without having a desire to kind of curate or script the answer. I'm really genuinely curious, what is the answer to this question? I think it's very similar to you. I come up with very good questions, and then I'm curious to the answer.
You're giving me way
to
too
the
much
questions.
credit here.
Yeah. No, you really do, though. You come up with great questions, and you're genuinely interested in the answer without trying to guide the answer to a certain area. And I think that's part of what makes me good at what I do, is I don't really care what the response is, as long as it's authentic and genuine and honest.
Okay. You've touched on a couple things. Collaboration circle, which I promise we'll get into. I probably want to wrap up the last thread for now on journaling. And the question I want to ask here is, you clearly take a lot of notes. You bring your journal everywhere. I imagine the journal you had in 2008 is not the same journal you are using now. Where
Correct.
do you keep your journals? How do you go back to the journals? Is there order to the chaos, or is that chaos might be a bad word for this, but is there order to this?
There absolutely is order, and I can actually show you. Can I move my camera?
Oh, I love this show and tell, guys.
You want a visual? Show and tell, guys. Okay, so let me start with, I'm very particular about my journals. I use one brand of journal. It is called Bookbinders. Okay.
Oh, it is beautiful.
This is my journal. And I use Uniball pens, the blue Uniballs.
Okay, I feel like I know why the ink is blue, but I imagine this is lawyer training, but what is to those who do not know, why blue over black or red or any other color?
I know, it's just my personal preference, but I love school supplies. Like when we were in law school, the manager of Office Depot would call us when he got new pen shipments. Like, that's how seriously I take my school supplies. So every single journal is dated and numbered. So it'll start with 2025, the year, and then journal 1, journal 2, journal 3. So they're all in order, and I have all of them. And many of them are in boxes, but I can show you, like, you can see, I don't know if you can see right here. Can you see on the shelf?
God.
Like, these are the journals. Like, do you see down here? These are all the different journals.
I have a question before you go on.
They have all different colors. Yeah.
How do you pick the colors for each journal?
Oh, that is a very interesting question. So it is so the journal company, they don't have any stores here in the US. It's a Swedish company, but I order them. Well, it's a Swedish company. So when I'm in Sweden, I buy them in Sweden. But they have other locations. So I buy them a lot in Paris. They have a couple of stores in Paris. Or I have them shipped, and they have the regular set of colors, and then they have seasonal colors. And I choose and pick whatever I kind of feel like at the time. Sometimes I'll have like 3 or 4 different colors. And when I finish one, I'm like, what do I feel like using next? And I'll just choose it.
It's at least of the shelf you were showing. And I apologize to all the folks who are listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and any other platform, because you are not seeing this. So if you want to see it, check it out on YouTube. That said, when you were showing us your shelf, it was a spectrum of reds, oranges to greens, and eventually blues. And there's 2 parts of the shelf. There's like the upper part of the shelf is like reds to greens, right? And I don't know if there was color theory involved in this, but they're like, they're complementary colors. And there's that spectrum that looks really nice. On the second level of the shelf, you have a concentration of pastel hues of greens and blues, and I find that to be very therapeutic. And I like, just from a color theory perspective, it looked like you had a lot of intentionality when it came to this.
So I personally prefer the blues, the greens, the teals, like think beach water. That's my jam. I do my best work, triple B, barefoot, bikini, boat. So anything that is colored like the ocean and or sky, those are my favorite colors. So hence the reds, the oranges, the pinks, sunset or sunrise. And then the blues and the greens are the water and the sky. Yeah.
And I want to say this was a very brief period when you were showing us this. We'll watch it back in the rewind, but you had a sand colored one as well, I want to say, or I thought I saw one.
Yeah, well, there is a sand one up. I didn't show you that, but that is, it's a brand new one that's empty. So the empty ones are up there. I wish the shelf was a little bit different. I need to kind of rearrange them because I'm getting too many of them. Yeah. And so when I get too many, I put them in a box and they have to go somewhere else. I mean, because I have, at this point, I mean, I have them since 2006. So, I mean, I have boxes of journals.
I love, one more time, the journal brand was called Bookbinder, you said?
Yes, it's called Bookbinders. It's a Swedish company.
I love it. Okay, we're going to include this in the show notes so you can check it out later as well. And probably also the Uniball pen in which you were using. Okay, that was my aside for journaling, and to revisit the family office narrative in which we were talking about earlier. One thing I really like that you said, and I wish if you can elaborate on this, this would be amazing. But you once publicly said that many family offices are often skilled at finding the right deals, but when it comes to looking for the right strategic partners and raising their own capital to get the deal done, they fall short. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think that building relationships it's a skill set and it's a learned behavior.
Yeah.
And just like anything, as we were speaking about earlier, it's 10,000 hours, right? You have to practice doing it. And I think that that many family offices, especially first generation ones, the reason you were able to have a family office is because you were heads down building something, right? And many times what you were building did not require you to be out and about and, building relationships and developing business. It required you to have your head down and build something.
Yeah.
And so I think it's very interesting in the family office world that the skill sets, and the ability to get really good diversified deal flow and have a network of investment partners, those skill sets and abilities are not always, attached to how you created the wealth in the first place.
Yeah.
So sometimes you're entering a new world where you have to learn how to do things that you've never done before.
And what is I don't know if this is a good way of describing it. There's no average trajectory, but in your experience, what does the common family office hero arc look like? When did they start thinking about deploying into venture?
Oh, that's a very interesting question, David. I think it's personal preference. Okay. I think everybody has ideas. Some families are more sophisticated than others, and they have very specific asset allocation models and investment thesis and policy statements. But I think a lot of it is genuine curiosity and genuine interest, right? It's a personal preference. Some people hear about Silicon Valley and venture and Shark Tank and all these different things, and it's very interesting to them. So they begin to learn about it, study it, ask questions about it. And other people aren't interested in it at all. It's the same as any area. There are trends, right? I think there are trends in the family office world as well. So just like anything, it's like you learn what you're interested in and then you study it and you get better at it.
What are some of the trends you've either historically seen or have seen as of late in the family office world?
I mean, I think over the past, I would say 20 years in general, I've seen families and family members and wealth creators and, family members who are in charge of deploying capital take more and more of a hands-on role, sleeves rolled up, really getting involved in the decision making. I think years ago, it was correct to have your wealth managed by people who manage wealth. And then now a lot of the trending is showing that families are pulling out of certain structured environments and going into more of an unstructured environment or taking more of a hands-on approach.
Why do you think that's the case?
I knew you were going to ask me that when I was
You teed yourself
when
up
I was
for
answering this. I mean, from a 50,000 foot perspective, the only reason we have banks, Wall Street, family offices, any of the structural components is because humans had ingenuity and creativity and built things. And those things now require structures to be housed and contained and managed.
Mm-hmm.
But those structures and the need for how human creativity is managed evolves over time.
Yeah.
And so from a 50,000 foot perspective, I think that humans are always going to be the creative ones. And to the extent that there's a certain kind of investment trend or something's new and interesting, we're going to get involved in that. And then when that's not working anymore, we're going to pull back, go back to ourselves and our family office, and then we're going to get interested in the next thing. So I think in general, I mean, hedge funds didn't exist, 70 years ago. And, banks didn't exist, 400 years ago, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so if you think about it from a very macro, global, 50,000 foot perspective, the humans are the ones that are doing things that allow value to be created. Before it was money, actual cash money and gold money. And now there are different kinds of currencies, right? That will continue to evolve. The types of value creation, the ways that we can exchange value will continue to evolve, as will the structures and institutions and methodologies for housing and organizing the value that's created. And so that's why I think that in the family office world, families themselves are the most nimble. And there's always going to be a certain group of families that is going to lead the pack on, we're going to try something new. We're going to try something different.
Historically, okay, I know we promised we're not going to name any names. So you can abstract all of this. And if this hits a dead end, I'll take responsibility for it. But historically, have there been, whether you've been involved with them or not, have there been families that you felt like led the charge to new initiatives, new strategies, or ways to think about things?
Yes, absolutely. And again, I think it's very much personal preference.
Yeah.
And this is all my opinion, but back to the journaling conversation earlier, right? I think that when you understand who you are and what makes you tick and what makes you happy, and you invest your time into that, then you're going to feel comfortable and safe being the leader of the pack, right? Yeah. So, I know many families that the human who runs the family is very hands-on. They want to understand and they want to learn.
Yeah.
I have one person in my collaboration circle group. We always joke we're the only people who actually read all the legal documents, including all the patent applications, right? We go into the data room and we read all the things because we're curious and we need to understand how it works and we want to learn. And I think that the very first thing everybody has to do is give themselves permission to lean into what they are interested in and what does it for them. Mm-hmm. And what they understand and what they have an affinity for, regardless of what everybody else says you should be doing.
I promise your episode is not on pause right now. I'm just thinking actively.
Well, I'll add one more thing.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of examples where people say you need to be invested in Bitcoin, or you need to be invested in real estate, or you need to, but the human has no interest in that thing.
Yeah.
And so that's why we always say, invest in what you know, invest in what you're passionate about, invest in what lights you up, because you're going to be better at it. You're going to care. You're going to be interested.
So
you're going to be more successful.
Totally.
If you invest in something that you don't think is interesting and you don't want to learn about it, your chances of success are going to be less than if it's something that you have an affinity for and a passion for, and you light up when people speak about it and you want to learn about it and you want to go to conferences and you want,
I 100% agree. A passion goes a really long way because a lot of shit will hit the fan and things will really suck in various chapters of you pursuing this goal. And if you
Yes.
aren't passionate about it, it's so easy to give up and pivot and do something else.
Yeah.
And pivoting too often is probably not a good thing for a long-term strategic play in terms of how you want to accumulate family wealth. And question for you. When someone comes to you and with the predisposition of, I like venture, I want to do venture, I don't know how to do so I come to you, Samira, how do you recommend most people start? Or if you were to recommend a strategy to a friend, a family member, like how would you start?
I mean, I personally would start by asking them questions about why. Why do you want to do venture? What's interesting? And really pulling on that thread, because understanding the why behind the motivation will allow me to give some thoughtful suggestions on here are proposed solutions that can really enhance and meet your why. If people want to do it because they really think they need to, because, of some intellectual reason that doesn't resonate with them, that is a very different conversation than I'm so interested in it. I think it's, so interesting. I had to work in my family's industrial steel business that I never found interesting, but we finally sold it and now I can pursue my passion, right?
Yeah.
So I think the why is important. And the second piece is I always advocate for multi-layered learning, meaning get information from different sources, talk to people, go to conferences, read books, listen to podcasts like Superclusters,
I didn't pay you to say this, by the way.
You did not pay me, but it's true. I think one of my things about me that has led me to where I am, one of my superpowers is to get information from a variety of different uncorrelated, like random sources, right? Because information and knowledge is power. And going through that exploratory process, if you're interested in venture and learning about it from a number of different aspects, vantage points, and, experiences of other people, you will figure out what the right way is to absorb the information for yourself. Some people like to read. Some people like to, learn live. Some people like to be in small group discussions. With all that being said, I think the pinnacle is having a small group of people, really smart people, and a brain trust that you can go to. Doesn't mean you have to do what they say, but it allows you in an environment to have strategic, interesting, creative conversations and allows your brain to go like that. And that was one of the really beautiful results of Collaboration Circle, is that we have this group of super smart people who are extremely accomplished and have experience in a variety of areas coming together, thinking about things and talking about things and sharing their viewpoints on things in a discussion format. It's not a talk at you. It's a discussion. And many people leave from there thinking about things differently, having more tools in their toolbox, etc.
I definitely want to touch on Collaboration Circle in just a bit, but to rewind a little bit to what you mentioned earlier, you said talk to people, go to conferences, read books, listen to podcasts. Could you give tactical examples of each of what you would recommend? Like, what are books you would recommend people to read? Who are people, maybe like 2 to 3 people that you think are luminaries in the allocator family office space? What conferences do you recommend people to go to? And then like what podcasts, minus Superclusters, that you recommend people to tune into?
I think it's not a list of who I think. I think you have to create a list that really resonates with you. Okay. So I don't care that everybody might be listening to the XYZ person. If you listen to one podcast, you're like, I don't get it. Move on.
Yeah.
You have to find things that are interesting and light you up. I will say one of my favorite business books, this isn't necessarily an investing book, but it's a business book. And it's funny because I actually quoted it today to somebody and I wrote a book report on it back in 2009, but it's called The 50th Law.
Okay.
And it is written by 50 Cent the rapper and Robert Greene, the gentleman who wrote 48 Laws of Power. Mm-hmm. And there are 10 laws. It's how he thinks about business, and it will make you think about business differently. I think it's a very interesting book. So as far as podcasts. I mean, I jump all over the place. I don't necessarily listen to many. I do more like think outside of the box about things in the world differently. Like I love Jay Shetty's podcast.
Beautiful.
Like I always try and learn how to think around what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
Right. So like during the day, we receive a lot of communications and information in our industry. And I like to learn about thinking around it differently. Yeah. So when I receive it, I think about it differently. That's my whole goal. Right.
Fair.
One of the conferences that I'm excited about these days is called Alea Global Group, ALEA, and it's run by a gentleman who he runs his family office. They're the largest, oldest family in Kuwait, and that's who I'm speaking on Lake Como with next week. Yeah, and we just did. They just hosted in Mexico City. We've done Rome. We're doing Dubai in December. So that's a really interesting group for me because it's very international. Of course, if you qualify, I would say come to Collaboration Circle events because they're amazing. But
how does one qualify?
So Collaboration Circle, our membership is referral only, invitation only. But when we do our bigger events, we invite outside thought leaders and we invite interesting founders. So it's the kind of thing where it depends on what our topic is or what we're leaning into. But I'm always looking for, I don't have a prescriptive model.
Yeah.
I always am looking for, it's kind of like an energy. I feel it, interesting person or somebody who I want to come teach us about something. We do Zooms every other Monday and we bring in super interesting thought leaders from all over the world. So, but what I would say is develop a buffet of options and try them all. Try them all. Try the options, sample the options, and then go to the things that are interesting to you and stop going to the things that are not. So, and I dip in and out. In the family office world, there are a lot of super established conferences and conference groups.
Yeah.
And I think they're all wonderful. They all have their own place and their own geographies and they're all, reiterating, but I don't go to the same things all the time. I'll pop in and out, because I always want to keep it new and fresh. And I also, want to kind of think outside the box. I also go to a lot of industry conferences that have nothing to do with investing. For instance, I went to the World Stem Cell Summit one year.
Oh.
Because I wanted to, I know. It's interesting. I go to things that are not traditional.
Yeah.
For investors to learn about different areas of things that, like, I've gone to, neuroscience-based things or like just things that have nothing to do with actual investing to learn and deeply immerse in certain areas or topics or industries. So I think that's important. But still to this day, one of my greatest sources of information referral, so like people who say, read this book, watch this, are people I respect and admire. And I ask all the time, what are you listening to? Who are you listening to? I have a small group of friends that I'm always like, when you listen to a really interesting podcast, forward it to me, So.
Do you remember the latest one you got forwarded? It's okay if you don't.
I cannot remember her name right now, but it was one, she was on Mel Robbins and she's a female, I want to say her name is Shelley. She's a female physician that talks about how women's bodies respond and react differently to muscle building and metabolism and protein.
Okay.
And she changed the way that so a lot of the research that's out there says that you should start, work out on an empty stomach or fasted cardio and all that. But she explained that as a female, the way our hormones and bodies work, if you don't eat calories and protein within an hour of waking up, your body starts like eating the muscles. And I'm dumbing that down a lot. But so she says you must eat and have substantial amount of protein in your body within an hour of waking up because it sets your system to function differently and it fuels your workouts differently.
Fascinating. Okay, I'm going to go find this later.
Yeah. Of course it's going to like come up to me like within,
if you find it later, send it to me and I'll just like put it in the show notes.
I will. Yeah. I know where to find it.
So
I wish I could remember her name.
I want to give some stage time to Collaboration Circle, and we've also like held it at bay for long enough where I two things. How did it start? And two, you can answer in whatever order makes sense to you. What are the hallmarks of building an enduring community? And you know where I'm going with this. That brings together the Cartiers, the Rockefellers, the Federal Reserve Chair, the former U.S. Inspector General, and more to come together. And something you've had for not just like a year or 2 years, something you've had for going on 2 decades, I want to say.
So, yeah, thank you for asking the question. I'll give you like the real, backstory and some bullet points, and then we can dive deeper and double click on anything that you choose. So back when I was deciding that I needed to quit my job and do something differently, I mean, we're talking 2007, 2008 timeframe. I'd read Malcolm Gladwell's Tipping Point, and I was learning all about connectors and mavens. And I remember I made this chart, and it was, it had XY axis, and across the top was different geographic regions. Across the side was different categories of industry. So it'd say like accounting and law and finance and media. And I started organizing the people I knew in those different sectors and geographies.
Yeah.
So I've always had this affinity for connecting and identifying groups of people and kind of knowing how to figure out like, I've always been able to see like the patterns and the connections and like synthesizing patterns and people and possibilities and all that kind of stuff. Like I've always had that connection vein, right? And so then when I started Salman Solutions, my advisory firm, again, it was all strategic partnership type relationships. Yeah. And it was me connecting with the client. The client has a problem that needs to be solved. I help the client flesh out a solution and then bring in the right kinds of people to execute on that solution. Mm-hmm. And so when I started in the family office world and I asked that question of, wait a minute, where do venture capital funds and private equity funds get their money? I always knew that it was humans at the top, right? Family offices, sovereign wealth funds. And I always had this vision for if you get the right humans from the right places that are controlling the majority of the world's wealth in the rooms, it's the Margaret Mead quote. A small group of people can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So that's always been running in the background. Family that I work for now that's based in the Northeast, we always talked about this concept of golden Rolodex, which the Rolodex is a historical term at this point, but the ability for us to be able to see connections between and among people and opportunities. We've always talked about that. But when it really started happening was the family would send me to family office conferences to speak on behalf of the family. And they were great, but I was always struck by two things. Number one, I never really understood, like there wasn't really always great hospitality, the food and wine. Mm-hmm. And I never felt like I could really like truly connect, like figure out who are the other families, like where's my posse of people who are just talking about ideas and who's investing in what. I felt there was a lot of talking at us, a lot of sponsors. And I also felt that some of the groups did not really curate who was in the room, right? So I felt myself having a lot of time trying to figure out who do I want to talk to and like, where do I get better food? So I started hosting these very small little dinners, and there's a whole backstory to why I hosted the first dinner when I did, but I started hosting very small dinners. We would be in different geographic regions. I knew there were, families in the room at the happy hour, and I'd say, hey, you guys, I know there's a scheduled dinner, but I made a reservation at restaurant down the road. Mm-hmm. I'm inviting 5 other families. Would you like to connect? And I never really had an agenda except for I wanted to curate an environment where we could really genuinely connect without other agendas, quote unquote. I'm making air quotes for those of you who are listening.
Thank you.
So in 2019, some of my families came to me and they said, Samira, we really love the groups of people that you curate. We want to spend a few hours in the conference room before we go to the dinners. And I said, okay. So I kind of test bunnied the model. We did Boston, New York, and Beverly Hills. We did a few hours in a conference room, and then we went to these dinners. And when we did a few hours in the conference room, people really felt comfortable and safe to open up the stories about their families. And what I realized, David, it's because they trusted me to curate who was in the room, because I did not have any kind of an agenda. I was just trying to get great people in a room sharing. So families were sharing about, here's the source of our wealth. Here are the industries that we are heavily invested in and or have built companies in, so we can help you diligence and make recommendations. Here are industries we want to learn more about. We have a lot in venture, but we've never invested in real estate. Who in the room can help us invest in real estate? And they started sharing what keeps them up at night.
Yeah.
How do I tell my daughter's fiance that he needs to sign a prenup? What do I do with all this wealth that I have generated? And how do I thoughtfully engage it and pass it along to my kids? But I also want them to be really, great human beings.
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so we created a safe, trusted environment for all the things, growing wealth, preserving wealth, accumulating wealth, and the experience of wealth and the human side of the experience of wealth. So that all happened in 2019 in a couple of locations. And after that, they were like, Samira, we love this. We want to do more. We want to take retreats. We want to take trips. And at that point, I was like, okay, I've always had this vision, but wait a minute, what did I do? Right?
Yeah.
So we kind of had big plans for 2020. Well, then the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
Put the first one on Zoom, March 23rd, 2020. Because there was no longer a geographic restriction, I was able to curate a little bit the list, and we could invite people from all over the world, not just whoever was in New York for dinner, right? So we did the first one March 23rd, 2020. And at the end of it, I said, would you all like to do this once a month or once a quarter? And they said, every week, Samira. So we did every week starting in 2020. Now we do every other week. So what I think the key to success is that I've always listened to my group members. I have a couple of hardcore, like I call them my OG collaboration circle people, been there with me since the beginning. And I listen and I gently and thoughtfully introduce new features and benefits and activities. But I don't have this huge, we must, monetize in this way right now, because I want to stay aligned with the humans who are part of my group. This beautiful brain trust we have, this beautiful bonded community based on genuine human connections and what we need and want. So now we do three main things. We do Zooms every other Monday. We bring in people from all over the world to teach us about all kinds of different things. And in addition to that, we have closed group sessions where we do discussions on a variety of topics. Then we do in-person events and strategic brand partnerships. Those could be happy hours, lunches, dinners. We do, bigger, longer things. We just did 2.5 days in Hudson Valley, which you might have read about in that Fortune magazine article. And then we also do invest together. But investment and transactions is not the purpose or pinnacle of our group. It's a lovely, byproduct of having this trusted bonded community. And what's been so interesting is that we now have a great brain trust to group diligence. So even if an investment opportunity may not be a fit for somebody's portfolio, because they're part of this group, they're happy to share their thoughts or their experiences or lend some of their resources to helping us diligence. So we're keeping the experience of investing as aligned to how a family does it, with co-invest families as possible.
I really like this. Just to parrot back what we heard here, which is a lot of times when people start building communities, they think about scale. They think about quantity more than quality. And they think about the numbers number of people they have in a room that fit a specific archetype. Yeah. And the beauty of what you've built over the decade and a half plus really came down to, we're not going to focus on expanding exponentially. It might be linear, it might be logarithmic, but the goal is to bring people that we all trust and can hold each other's thoughts in a sacred nature together. And that's almost like a counterintuitive thing to think about, because when people think about communities, they think about communities with people and they're not like one or two people, right? But you've been really intentional with how this scales. And it was almost this market pull when people were you said you initially pitched every month or every quarter. They're like, no, we want it every week. And so there's market pull where you ended up now building a little bit more structure, obviously through the pandemic and into now for. And I think that's beautiful.
Thank you. I mean, I'll tell you, it wasn't easy. There were a lot of people that were like, you have to do this and you have to do that. I'm like, well, no, I don't really have to do anything. And what I will tell you that I know for a fact, David, is the revenue and economic models for groups are misaligned with how human nature functions.
Elaborate on that.
And so, so when I started it, I didn't know the right model. But what I did know was that the transactional nature of how many of these organizations are structured is counterintuitive to what we want as humans, right? So as humans, our nervous systems are programmed to be in community. That's why it's called collaboration circle. If you think about it, humans back at the beginning of time, you had to be in a circle around the fire for survival. So our systems are programmed to be in circular community-based situations. And if there gets to be too many people, then you can't get close enough to the fire, right? So in my mind, it's always been, there's something at the middle of this, like our, kind of, it's not an actual fire, but it's the thing that draws people. And I'm not trying to build a group with 100,000 people, right? We might have subgroups or other groups, but there's an intentional nature to the fact that if we make the environment and the community serve what humans need to be seen, heard, understood, feel safe, feel trusted. I had the most beautiful compliment from our Hudson Valley gathering. It was a very iconic family with a famous last name, said to me, this is the safest I've ever felt outside of my home at a community gathering. That was the highest compliment that I could ever have, because numbers and volume is not what programs humans to feel safe and to be authentic and to create. In order for us to do our best work and be our most thoughtful and most creative, we have to be fully dropped down into our bodies and safe in our nervous systems. And some of the environments that our industry has curated are literally exactly opposite of that.
I'm curious for you, is there anything you did intentionally, technically, to ensure the psychological safety of everyone in the room? For example, did you take everyone's phone at the at the very beginning of the event, and you're like, hey, we're not going to give your phones back until the very end of the event? Like, was there anything you did on a more tactical level?
No, but I will tell you this. I know the tone is set at the top. So even though we had been doing the lunches and dinners and all that for many years, I think the real ethos of Collaboration Circle started when we put it on Zoom during the pandemic. At the time, it was March 23rd, 2020. We did not know what was happening in the world. And my father was dying of stage 4 cancer. And I was at our family home with him, and hospice was in the house. So I had no choice but to show up fully, authentically myself. I couldn't try and pretend to be anybody else because I'm in this, really intense situation with my family, and it's a pandemic. We don't know what's happening. And so it was almost like all kind of like, professional, intellectual, like, let me make it like this, went out the window. I'm like, hey, you guys, we're going to meet on the Zoom, and we're just going to be very real with each other. And so that honest realism was set from the beginning. And as a result, it's allowed an environment for people to feel safe. Like if the leader is putting on airs and not being honest with who they are and whatever, and they're trying to be somebody they're not, it doesn't really work. So I think, I had to show up as real, full Samira, being honest. My father is dying. We're going to put this thing on Zoom. And, shortly after we started, my father did go to heaven, like probably 2 months after the first. And so I took some weeks off, and I had, some people guest host for me, and the others would text me. They're like, it's not the same without you. Come back, So it wasn't that I was doing anything except for I wanted to create a certain environment that I didn't find like we had in our industry. So honestly, it was very, like I said this earlier, it's the only thing I've done that it wasn't all strategic and prescriptive and analyzed and, written out on a list and here's a game plan. It was literally like, this feels good and right and safe. And we all need a place to talk to each other that is good and right and safe. And, we do have, when we invite you to join the group, we do have you fill out a questionnaire, and you have to, check off something that says, confidentiality, non-circumvent, and that you're not trying to sell things to us and you're only using this for your own personal family. And, members, because it's such a bonded community, they set the tone of behavior. So everybody is kind, respectful. People aren't spamming each other. It's a community that has a certain way that we function. And it's very difficult for some people to understand, why haven't we done this or that or the other? And it's because I like the way that it is, and my group members like the way that it is, and everybody says there's nothing else like it. And we are growing it, and it is growing, and we are, building out our strategic brand partnerships globally. We are expanding globally. We are inviting in new components, but we're doing it in a way that is authentic and honors what we've built, not in the way that's like, we must have hockey stick growth and we have to get 5 new members by this date. I'm like, what is the point of that? If you break the thing you built, there was no point.
I just want the audience kind of like rest with that fact a little bit as well. And we might just add an extra pause in the actual episode. But I think that's such a powerful message to send. And I want to wrap things up because I want to be cognizant of time as well. So if you can help me land the plane here, and there's almost like no good way to follow that comment right there. But I want to take a step back. And I mentioned this earlier. I found a picture of you that probably needs more context. And I'm going to preface it a little bit before I show this to you with, I believe this is a certain tradition you had in your life somewhere between the years of 2015 and 2022.
Okay.
And I'll screen share this right here. And I'd love some additional context behind this.
Before you share it, I want you to tell me, what platform did you find it on?
Instagram.
Okay. I'm like, what's happening?
So I'll share this, and then
can we tell the audience?
We will tell them. Yeah, go for it.
I have no idea what's happening.
You have no idea what's happening.
I have no idea what you're going to show me.
I've intentionally not shared this with you beforehand, but do you remember this photo?
Oh my God, David. This is hysterical. There are people that are going to be crying laughing when they see this video. Yes.
So can you describe what we're looking at right now, and then share what that tradition is?
I cannot wait. I have to take a picture of this exactly right now. I'm going to make so many people laugh. Okay. What you're looking at is me, my body, in a Dior, Christian Dior, the store, shopping bag, holding a glass of champagne. This is the second time this activity has happened. The first time it happened was many years prior. I think this one was in 2021, maybe?
2022. June 2022 is when I found it.
22. Okay. This was 22, but the first time it happened was pre-pandemic. I would have to think what year.
2015.
And 2015 was the first one. Yes. And the way it happened was, so this one is actually at the Dior store in London. But the first one was at Dior in Paris. And I was with a friend, and we had been shopping, and we'd bought things. And we're walking home down the Champs-Elysees, and I'm carrying this bag. The bag was ginormous. And by the time we got back to our hotel, I looked at my friend and I'm like, this is like the largest shopping bag I have ever experienced in my life. I was like, in fact, I think I can fit into this bag. And sure enough, I got myself into the bag. And so fast forward, 7 years later, we were at Dior in London, And again, I was like, I can fit it into this bag. The bag is humongous. And so I am in the shopping. I love that you found this picture. It's one of my, So
it feels
it's one of those
iconic.
things
That it's just like, this is Samira in her comfort zone. And it's beautiful. And also I will mention that Dior is probably this Dior shopping bag is probably one of those things that haven't suffered from the shrinkflation in the economy.
It's true. It's true. And I'm a Dior girl. I have beautiful, beautiful memories, like of my mom taking me to the store when I was like a very little girl. Like I have been a Dior girl before Dior was cool. Like Dior just got super cool, but there was a time when like not many people carried Dior, but I always did. So I love that you found that picture. It means a lot.
It was, as soon as I saw it, I was like, I've got to ask Samira about it. If it's not on the podcast, I'll ask her separately about it.
It's amazing. No, it has to be on the podcast.
It definitely has to. And people will see this artifact as it is, as we were explaining it. So one last question from me as we get ready for the seatbelt lights to turn on and we actually land this plane. There's a quote actually I recently stumbled across from the show The Office that I couldn't get out of my mind since the day I saw it. And I'll say it to you, and I'd love your thoughts on that question. So the quote is, "I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them." And so with all the doom and gloom today in this world around us and a lot of this pessimism for where the world's going to go, what are the reminders that you, Samira, have for yourself that you keep close to your heart that today that we're still in the good old days?
I love this question. And I will tell you, I have, the distinct honor of just hosting my collaboration circle group in Hudson Valley. And so I had an upfront and personal reminder that we're in the good old days of humanity, right? I believe in humans. I believe in humanity. I believe in the good of humanity. And I saw, people come from all over the world. We had people flying from all over the world. We had between 65 and 70 people at our gathering at a private estate. And they really formed a bonded community. Some people were moved to tears because we had some really intense breath work and meditation sessions coupled with thought leadership, gourmet food. And a couple of people told me it really changed their lives. And so the thing that I get to experience when I host my Zooms every other Monday and seeing people really connect as humans and host these things, like I believe in the good of humanity, and I do my work myself, and I encourage other people to do their work. So we're not always just receiving the bad and the news and the whatever, but we can watch humans, because humans are going to, I have faith that we're going to figure this out, and we're not going to kill each other completely off, and that we're going to figure the planet thing out. I read something the other day that says that there are signs that there is less ice melting, et cetera, et cetera. So, I think that you have to find joy and gratitude in the little things every single day. You cannot, doom and gloom. We are in a time now that is very unprecedented, but if you think about it intuitively, like our generations have had it pretty easy. Like we didn't grow up with war or famine or whatever in this country. So, and I try and, I am realistic, but I also try and invest my energy in time, in spaces, in places with people that feel authentic and genuine and kind, because love grows.
There is no better way to end the episode than right there. Samira, thank you so much.
Thank you, David. It's my pleasure. This was really fun.
All right. Until the next Superclusters fans, we'll see you soon.
Oh, that's a very interesting question, David.
Hey Superclusters fans, David from Post here. If you enjoyed today's episode, all I ask are two small things. One, there's a little red subscribe button down there if you're on YouTube, and a follow button if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If and only if you enjoyed today's episode, that's the button to click. You'll get many more presents, many more insights, and many more brilliant minds straight through the internet vines just like this one very, very soon. 2, it'd mean a lot to me if you could share it with one other friend who could gain a lot from listening to today's Cosmos of Insights. Also, let me know if there's anything I should have asked down in the comments, and if there's enough interest, we'll have today's guest back for an even spicier part dose. I made a promise to myself to record 100 episodes of Superclusters, so every comment, question, and review helps me make this experience more helpful and fun for you, and makes investing in venture a little less scary and a lot more friendly. And lastly, I wanted to share a quick disclaimer. The views expressed in this podcast are for informational purposes only and are solely the views of myself and the guest alone. They are not representative of any organization that we're a part of. None of the views expressed herein constitute legal, investment, business, or tax advice. Any allusions or references to funds or companies are purely for illustrative purposes only and should not be relied upon as investment recommendations. Consult a professional investment advisor prior to making any investment decisions. And that's all from me. I'll see you in the next.